Russia lost in the US election. They had high expectations for it, and no wonder. The Republican Party has been home to a growing and powerful isolationist movement that has come to the forefront in recent years. Proponents of this movement promised to stop supporting Ukraine and said that Americans should forget about Putin and his war. The war is distant, foreign, extremely expensive and definitely not American. The politicians who question the cost of supporting Ukraine aim to capitalize on growing public fatigue. The war is not ending and food prices are rising.
Your family budget, your ability to fill up your tank, none of it should hinge on whether a dictator declares war and commits genocide half a world away.
And no matter how sympathetic the cause, my oath of office is to the national security of the United States of America. We cannot save Ukraine by dooming the U.S. economy.
Under Republicans, not another penny will go to Ukraine.
In Russia, the statements are listened to and considered to be the consensus opinion. Pro-Kremlin outlets love the ultra-conservative magazine The National Interest, which frequently publishes analysis with the basic message of "you can't beat Russia, but even if you can, it has nuclear weapons, so watch out." Here are quotes from its latest issue. Imagine the situation. The employees of the Russian presidential administration are sitting there sorting through Western press materials, paying special attention to the American press, of course. And for the first time in a good while, they see a genuine, clear trend that looks positive for Moscow. They carefully pick out quotes, and someone like Dmitry Peskov prints them out and takes them to the president. He reads them and smiles. Those in power in Russia were eagerly anticipating a Republican victory, which would greatly reduce the power of the White House and pause or at least massively slow down arms delivery to Zelensky. Ukraine would finally be theirs.
73% американцев недовольны или возмущены происходящим в стране. Больше половины опрошенных не одобряют работу Байдена, 46% считают, что он Америке вредит.
Olga Skabeyeva hosts a special broadcast for the American election the day after the vote. She seems unfazed by the title of the broadcast, "Trumpists Anticipating Revenge Despite Voter Fraud," which has, of course, been approved in advance. These complaints come from a host on Russia's state TV, an organization that once announced a legendary 146% voter turnout. Yet Skabeyeva is furious about the flaws in the American electoral system.
Не обходятся на якобы самых демократических выборах в мире без скандалов. Сотрудник американского избирательного участка вроде бы даже является наблюдателем. Спокойно ставит пометки на бюллетенях средь бела дня.
She's not alone. The pro-Kremlin Telegram channels were flooded with scathing posts about rampant voter fraud in the American elections.
The Biden administration has ruled out pushing Ukraine to negotiate an end to the conflict, despite growing concerns on both sides of the aisle over the economic and potential security consequences should the United States get dragged into direct hostilities with Russia. Instead, Washington continues to funnel billions of dollars worth of weapons, equipment, and aid to Ukraine, despite not believing Kyiv can win the war. Not exactly a sound geopolitical strategy. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky contends that Ukraine will push Russia entirely out of Ukraine, including Crimea, which Russia annexed in 2014. If this scenario materializes, Moscow may utilize its final trump card, tactical nuclear weapons. The utilization of nuclear weapons in Ukraine would be catastrophic and could lead to the United States or NATO getting directly involved in the conflict. By avoiding efforts to push for a ceasefire and a lasting settlement, the United States is prolonging a conflict.
When I listen to them, I often think how good it is that there are no such problems in Russia, that our elections are consistently stable with no surprises, no international observers, no opposition candidates, and essentially any choices at all. That way, we can concentrate on the Russophobes abroad.
The initial results of the US election and yesterday's hysterical ultimatum of Ukraine's Green leader in a dirty green t-shirt a confirmation that the world familiar to Grandpa Biden is disappearing. Support for the United States leadership in the world is decreasing, and their faith in the drugged-up leader has been a mistake.
Dmitry Medvedev, deputy chairman of the Security Council, kindly provided some fresh thoughts on the loss of America's international prestige. Discussion of the moral decline of American politics and the nation itself has taken over Russian patriotic outlets and social media spaces.
In Minnesota, biological male Lee Funke, who considers themselves a woman, defeated Republican Trace Johnson and became the first non-binary person in the state House of Representatives. And in New Hampshire, the state beauty queen contest winner for Miss America was also a biological male, Brian Nguyen. It seems like America is becoming increasingly polarized. The Republicans are moving further to the right and the Democrats further to the left. One party wants to protect Christian values and the other wants to impose leftist liberal ones. Who knows, maybe the thing that sparks civil war in America will not be racial differences, but another transgender person winning a beauty contest. LGBT propaganda, the imposition of same-sex marriages, and the destruction of traditional values have created a deep division within American society.
Vyacheslav Volodin reports President Biden's supporters are being defeated in the U.S. elections. This is the fourth man in the Russian political hierarchy, and simply saying he is spreading fake news. Massive propaganda attack has prepared a wide Russian audience for the triumph of Trump's party. Now it's too hard to explain the failure. According to CNN, there is at least some intelligence confirming that Russia delayed the withdrawal of troops from Kherson until after the U.S. midterm elections in order not to hand an additional advantage to Joe Biden and the Democratic Party. At the very least, the intelligence community believes that the topic of the election was discussed among Russian leadership and was among the factors that influenced the decision. If this is true, Russia has strongly overestimated the importance Americans attach to individual battles rather than the outcome of the campaign, U.S. politicians noted in a conversation with reporters, suggesting that it will also confirm the primitiveness of Russia's information strategy. Of course, elections did not go the way that Russia anticipated, and Washington is now in a position of strength. Not just because of the relative success of the Democratic Party in the elections, but also from Ukraine's victories on the battlefield and President Biden's first meeting with Putin's supposed friend, Xi Jinping.
We discussed Russia's aggression against Ukraine, reaffirmed our shared belief in the threat where the use of nuclear weapons is totally unacceptable.
China is also worried by Putin's frequent invocation of the nuclear option. Washington and Beijing have found common ground from their aversion to weapons of mass destruction and shared desire to remain living. This, however, does not mean that the Americans are pressuring Zelensky to go and talk to Russia. Zelensky made his position very clear and concrete. He presented the terms of the peace agreement to the G20, which he called the G19 on Monday.
Виконання статуту ООН і відновлення територіальної цілісності України та світового порядку, виведення російських військ і припинення бойових дій, міжнародну конференцію провести для фіксації ключових елементів повоєнної безпекової архітектури в євроатлантичному просторі, включно з гарантіями для України.
Sergei Lavrov, whom Putin sent to Bali in his place, listened attentively to Ukraine's president. But would anyone actually believe that Russia's head of diplomacy would consider, much less accept, the demands of his neighbor?
Категорически отказывается от каких-либо переговоров и выдвигает условия, которые заведомо нереалистичны и неадекватны этой ситуации.
Lavrov left Bali before the summit was over and the final declaration was signed. In all likelihood, it became clear in Indonesia to the Russian minister that despite all the hints suggesting readiness for negotiations, which certainly came from Moscow, that Washington would not conduct any talks with regard to the status of the Ukrainian territories. The disappointment of Putin, who has been weakened and battered, now in Kherson as well, was expressed in a stream of missiles fired at Ukrainian cities. Russian leadership is currently in a tremendously tough position, and the Kremlin is raising raids by striking at Ukraine. And it is waiting for a compromise that will not come.
The relationship currently is and will remain unfriendly.